We'll see what happens with him. But let's get into the opposite side of the ball, the guys the cornerbacks match up against. Let's talk about the wide receiver position, which, spoiler alert, this is what we have talked about every year we have ever done this show. Who's going to make the team at wide receiver? The question on everybody's mind at all times. The top end seems to be set. We seem to know like 4 guys, right? We know Rashad Bateman.
Yeah.
We know, Devin Duvernay, James Prochet, and Tylan Wallace. Yeah. That's 4 guys. I don't know why I'm counting like that, but that's 4 guys on the team that we know of. In the NFL, you need a lot more than 4 guys.
Yeah.
Who do you see joining that group? Because it's kind of crazy that we didn't add any wide receivers. Like during the draft, the whole process, like when we traded Hollywood, I was like, oh, that's fine. Like, I'm not upset at the trade.
Yeah,
the Ravens are going to have a wide receiver.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, I remember that one.
And then it's like the Ravens they didn't draft a wide receiver. They haven't signed one. So now the guy's competing for the final spots, and the Ravens typically have had 6 wide receivers. So that would mean, 2 more guys. The Ravens have Benjamin Victor,
yep,
Jaylen Moore, Shamar Bridges, Raleigh Webb, Slade Bolden, Makai Polk, Trayvon Clark. This is according to our lads. There's also Devin Williams, if he decides to come over to the Ravens. I don't know of any other players, but Devin Williams is the only one that I can think of off the top of my head. But that is 7 players right there fighting for 2 spots. And they're all unproven players. I believe all of them are undrafted.
Yeah.
Who do you think gets there? What do the Ravens need in those final 2 spots? How about that? What are the types of builds the Ravens need? Do they need, a slot guy? Or do they need that big body? Or just anybody?
I mean, honestly, I know people are going to get mad. Everybody goes like, oh, yeah, they're all wide receiver 2s behind Rashad Bateman. But if we're being real, and don't get it wrong, Ravens Fly TTB family, James Prochet is my guy. He's my guy. But those 3, James, Dev, and Tylan, are all slot receivers. And the reason I will put them in the slot is because of our quarterback. Lamar Jackson is an agile guy. He's a mobile guy. And, you need someone that can just break from the route and just be accessible. And I feel like all 3 of them can do that in the slot. But me personally, at that wide receiver number 2, I feel like you really need someone that's a big body, that you can throw the deep ball, someone that is accessible, someone that understands his role in the team. And me personally, I'm going with Shamar Bridges and Mr. Makai Polk. You're talking about 2 guys are 6'3", 6'4". Yes, I forgot which HBCU that Shamar Bridges came out of. It was one of those ones that was very small. Didn't get a lot of time, but from the highlights I did see that he
Fort Valley State.
There we go. And I think that was in. Was that in? Is that? I don't know. Fort Valley State is like in West Virginia, or Mississippi, one of the 2. So I definitely, if it was like in West Virginia, they definitely didn't get a lot of shine out that way. But when we have found gems from little schools, I mean, yeah, granted they was on defense, but we're hoping that we get that same type of effect on offense, and I'm hoping that happens with Shamar Bridges. 6'4", big body guy. He knows how to box out. He can stretch the field. I think he ran like a 4.5, maybe 4.6 in his 40. That's decent enough. I mean, as long as he can get, he can pose as a threat, and everything can open up for the rest of the wide receivers, because that's at the end of the day, that's what you need. I mean, we already have Mark Andrews, so everybody's going to key in on Mark Andrews, so that's going to open up for Rashad Bateman. Now you need someone on the opposite side of Rashad Bateman that's also going to say, well, hey y'all, we know that the ball is usually going to go to Mark Andrews and Rashad, but check this guy on the outside. We gotta respect this guy on the opposite side, and that's. And I feel like, between, and I believe Makai Polk went to Mississippi State.
Yes.
That was another big body that also, I think he lined up in the slot too, which is crazy. If you're 6'3", 6'4", and you're lining up in the slot, yo, shout outs to y'all. But I mean, he's another guy you literally can throw all around too. So I like those two. I like those two guys. Being a deep threat and also moving the chains.
Yeah, I definitely like those guys. I think Shamar Bridges is definitely one to look out for. He's a player that is under the radar, undrafted, something to prove. Definitely out of a small school is even more to prove because they just don't get nearly the recognition that other guys do. But I think the first guy that makes the team is Jaylen Moore. I think Jaylen Moore showed a lot last year. We just didn't really need it. Trying to build out the roster, we were looking for the size. And so it was like Miles Boykin, versus Benjamin Victor was kind of the main thing because we had Hollywood as our number one. We had just drafted Bateman and Wallace, and it was like, okay, we're kind of set on these smaller guys. But Jaylen Moore has been with the team since 2020, and I feel like he is a player that knows the system well enough to where he could come in, and he's shown flashes, and I think that he could do it. I think he could be the back-end wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. I think he would be the final receiver on the depth chart. I think he's been there. He's put in the work. I think he deserves a spot.
Now, did Jaylen Moore went to Louisville?
He went to UT Martin.
Okay. See, I would even throw Benjamin Victor in there, but it's like, bro, he just been dealt a bad hand too with injuries.
Yeah.
I mean, being immediately put on the PUP list, right soon as training camp starts, I know that can mentally hurt someone. So I mean, just getting through that uphill battle, that's definitely tough. So I mean, I definitely would have threw him in there, but I mean, no, I definitely like the Jaylen Moore option as well.
Yeah, and I was thinking about Benjamin Victor, and I was like, okay, I think Benjamin Victor, but him starting on the PUP list makes it more difficult. And so I'm not going to predict him. For my big body, there's a couple of guys that I could go with. But I think I'm going to rock out with Makai Polk. He's young. He's 20 years old. Which is very different from some of the other guys trying to fight for the spot. I just really like what he can bring to the table. Now, if Shamar Bridges ends up making it, totally fine. I'm rooting for him as well. Whoever is the best, I want them on the team. But I really like Makai Polk coming out of Mississippi State, coming out of the SEC. I think he's got the most experience outside of Benjamin Victor coming into the NFL with really good competition. Benjamin Victor went to Ohio State, which has been wide receiver U. Now, speaking of current wide receiver U, there is Slade Bolden, but I don't think we really need that slot wide receiver.
Yeah,
yeah, so it's like I just don't really see Slade Bolden. He could definitely be a practice squad guy. If there's an injury at the slot spot, we could bring him up and he would be okay, and he could play slot. But, I see him as a, back-end slot wide receiver rather than, I feel like I don't want him on the roster unless he's legitimately playing. Whereas Makai Polk, I'm like, he could be on the roster. So if someone goes down at any spot, he can step up. Or, hey, we need a big body, call on him. Whereas it's harder to just call on Slade Bolden because you can't line him up on the outside. He has, zero athleticism. He's not good with the ball in his hands. All he can do is run decent routes. He's not even the best route runner. I don't like the comparisons that people make because they're like, oh, we got this small white guy wide receiver for the slot. And they're like, he's Hunter Renfrow. I'm like, no, he's not. They're like, he's Cooper Kupp. And I'm like, he's definitely not Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp's 6'3".
I didn't know they was making those type of comparisons. They would have said,
yeah.
They would have said Julia Edelman, something like that. Okay, but still not that. You'll still be second tier.
I hear Renfrow all the time, and I'm like, what?
That's completely fit right there.
Yeah. When Slade Bolden has the national championship winning play against the best team in the country, like Hunter Renfrow did, with Deshaun Watson against the Alabama Crimson Tide, then maybe that whole offense was designed. Okay, we've got Hunter Renfrow in the slot. That is our main guy. Then they had other wide receivers. I cannot pinpoint the exact names of those other guys, but overall it was okay, you got to stop Renfrow. Slade Bolden was in an offense with Jamison Williams, top 15 pick, John Mechie, one of the best wide receivers in college football, but then he had his injury, so that, dropped his draft stock. I've talked to Alabama fans, and I've said, like, hey, what do you think about Slade Bolden? They're like, that dude is trash. They're like, when the other guys went out, Slade Bolden had to be wide receiver 1 for a little bit. They're like, he was horrible. Like, he couldn't do anything. Now, if Slade Bolden makes the team, obviously I'm rooting for him. But I'm trying to give the opinion of people that have watched him, because I haven't seen a lot of him. And I've watched Alabama play, and Slade Bolden has not made any plays where I'm like, oh, wow, that was great. And I noticed great route running. I noticed all those, the technical stuff. And I never was watching Alabama and was like, oh, man, who's that guy? Like, and if you're playing at the University of Alabama, you got to be that guy.
For real.
And he really, he wasn't. If he makes the team, shout out to him. But I'm not expecting it, because I just think that we have slot wide receivers, and he can't play on the outside. James Prochet can play in the slot, he can play on the outside. Devin Duvernay can play in the slot, can play on the outside. Rashad Bateman can play in the slot, can play on the outside. Why do we need a slot wide receiver if we have 3 already on the team that are solidified? And then we could also see, hey, maybe Tylan Wallace could step up on the inside. He only lined up outside on the right side of the field in college, so he's taking time to develop the rest of the field. But it would be really difficult for Slade Bolden to make this team. And I think he's kind of the only other guy that I see with a decent chance outside of Polk, Shamar, and Benjamin Victor.
Now, what's the young man out of Cal?
Trayvon Clark.
I know. Everybody was hyped up when we signed him. They said he was supposed to be that guy too. Now, I think the only person, if the wide receiver from NC State would have stayed, I definitely would have made a big push for him.
I liked him. I cannot remember his name.
It's like, I think his last name is Makai, something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I definitely would have made a push for him. I don't know what happened with that situation, but hey, you gotta do what you gotta do what's best for your career.
Yeah, and Trayvon Clark, I'm a Pac-12 fan. I root for the Stanford Cardinals, so I've watched Trayvon Clark play.
It's about to be open season for them, right? After this season.
That's true. Yeah, they're going back to the Pac-8 pretty soon. We don't need. I think the most recent was Arizona and Arizona State. That was when they became the Pac-10, was with Arizona and Arizona State. But Trayvon Clark, I had no idea who this dude was. and I watch Cal. I watch these teams. Like, I watch, when guys like Juju Smith-Schuster are coming out, guys like Michael Pittman, Amon-Ra St. Brown. These Pac-12, I knew who Devin Williams was. I had watched him. I was like, okay, I like Devin Williams. I've watched Cal, and I was like, I don't know who this dude is. He had 2 games with 100 yards receiving. Funny enough, one of them was against Stanford, but it was on one play of 84 yards, and Stanford defense is atrocious. So, oh well. Maybe I should know who he was. He kind of torched my team. But overall, 33 receptions, 658 yards. He's a deep play guy, which could be valuable, But the difficulty is when you're bringing in seniors. He's coming out he's older. I prefer, because I'm pretty sure Makai Polk is only 20. I prefer a guy like that because he has more time to grow. Yeah, he was a redshirt sophomore.
Oh yeah, he had to put a lot of work in. There.
Redshirt sophomore in the SEC, at good size. That's something that gets me excited. And he mossed people. He mossed a lot of people playing. He had 105 receptions, 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns in the SEC. That's something where I look at him like, okay, he came in, he was young. It's tough in college football to be a young wide receiver, and put up 1,000 yards, no matter where you are,
Yeah.
because coming in at 18, 19, 20 years old and competing with guys that are 22 and been in that system, it's difficult. But he did it, and he was able to be, one of the top targets on that team. So that's why I think Makai Polk, I really am excited about him potentially making the roster.
And you know what? You know what the great thing about it now is, McConnell. We have the arguably maybe possibly the best wide receiver coach group now. Because remember, couldn't develop wide receivers. We didn't have the coaching to develop wide receivers, and we also didn't draft the correct wide receivers for this offense. So I feel like this upcoming season, I think they're gonna rock out with these young men. I feel like they're going these between Keith and T, they're gonna bring out the best of them. And also, TTB family, do not forget that someone else that is maybe that is positioned at tight end can line up on the outside.
Yeah.
Be the number 2 wide receiver. I'm just saying, y'all. I'm just saying.
Mr. Gorilla, Isaiah Likely. Absolutely.